Good morning, everyone. I'm Don Levy, President and Chief Cultivator at Smithbrook Farm, which is my little consulting practice. But you are not here to hear me. You are here to hear from our distinguished panel around the topic of the digital consumer. You know, when this panel was first conceived a number of years ago, the digital consumer was truly in its infancy. There weren't that many digital consumers. There was a time where people were debating whether or not people would go shopping online. Now, I realize that when you look at that today, that seems perfectly ridiculous. But the whole definition of the digital consumer is changing, and what the digital consumer does and expects is evolving. So perhaps it's less about the digital consumer per se, and more about the kind of services, the kinds of opportunities that a multi-platform, network, connected world enables for new and expanded experiences and engagement with entertainment and all that it means. We have a great panel here that provides you with a cross-section of perspectives. Rather than hearing multiple people describe the same experience in different words, each of our panelists approaches this topic from a different point of view. So, what we'll do is we'll have everyone introduce themselves. We have John Ruby, Scott Greenberg, Mark Ordesky, Jane Fleming, and Mark Richards at the end. What I'm going to do is ask each of our panelists just to take a couple of minutes, introduce themselves, their companies, and a highlight of their business to you. And then we'll go into a series of conversational questions. I intend for today's session to be fairly interactive, more of a conversation amongst the panelists. So everybody here should please feel free to jump in at will. Do not necessarily stand on ceremonies. Whoever speaks loudest will get their points across. However, I will be a little bit of a shepherd and try to keep us on track so that we cover as much ground. I also want to make sure that we save enough time so that all of you can also participate in the conversation. So if you do have questions or comments, please feel free to make them. We will hold that until the latter portion, but I will reserve time for that, so be prepared. So why don't we start with, let's start with Mark Richards, and we'll work our way back here.
It's Mike. Mike Richards. Hi.
Mike.
How you doing? I just want to first of all say it's great to be back here. I've met a lot of great people coming to this event that have really helped our business, so I appreciate all of you being here, and we'll try to be witty and charming and entertaining. And then I'll be here too. I'm the executive producer of The Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal, which are two game shows on CBS. Yeah, they're on right now. I've been there for almost 7 years. I took over Price is Right a year after Drew Carey started, when it was a cataclysm because Bob Barker was leaving. We've done a ton in the digital space to try to move what is a Jurassic franchise into this century, and we're gaining on it. We're in 2002. So we're getting close, and we've had a lot of success. And then my production company has an overall deal with Fremantle Media, and we've sold a bunch of shows recently, including our first digital series. So, but it's really great to be here, and thank you all for being here.
Hi, I'm Jane Fleming. I, with Mark Ordesky, run an independent film and television group called Court 5. We've been in existence for the last 4 years and have produced 3 movies and most recently a television series for ABC called The Quest. And I'll, why don't you expand on it since we're partners?
The Quest is probably the most relevant actually to the panel here today because it was a show where we took 12 real people and immersed them in a fully realized fantasy setting where they competed to be the one true hero of a fictitious realm. We made it with partnership with the folks from Amazing Race and Queer Eye. And although the show performed solidly for the network, where it really took off was in the Twitter sphere and online. And we've been developing all sorts of thoughts about that, keyed off our experience in the Quest, which we can get into in more detail later.
But we think it's a really exciting time for the first time that independent creators can access their fan base directly. And if fostered well, they stick around for a long time. So we're excited about the space.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Scott Greenberg. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Bento Box Entertainment. We are the leading independent primetime animation studio. We have offices in Burbank, California, Atlanta, Georgia, and Toronto. We produce shows, Bob's Burgers on Fox is our show, Brickleberry on Comedy Central, The Awesomes on Hulu. We have the new Mark Henteman, Seth MacFarlane show, Border Town, this fall on Fox. We have a YouTube show, puppet show called Glove and Boots, amongst other shows. We're a full-service animation company. We provide, turnkey, both production service. We have a full development. We sell our shows. We also have a strategic relationship with Chorus Entertainment in Canada for their Teletoon at Night to produce and distribute shows. For us, digital, we'll go into it and answer questions. Really, we touch it in multiple touch points. Extensions of our broadcast shows on Fox, just extending from those relationships. And Bob's is a very viral show with the fan base. To The Awesomes, which is a Hulu show, and while it's digital, Hulu's a network, and they've been phenomenal. And then to our YouTube show, where we're direct to consumer, and we're really having fun with Periscope right now and other things. So thank you.
Hi, I'm John Ruby. I'm CEO of Fathom Events. Fathom is the largest cinema event company in the world. You might not have seen our logo, but you've probably seen our shows from the Met in HD, which is now in its 10th year, and just past 17 million tickets, $400 million over the life of it. Doctor Who, the Grateful Dead live from Chicago on the 4th of July weekend. What we do is we eventize content. We take advantage of digital advances within our industry to allow communities to gather in our theaters, and literally the movie theater is becoming the digital performing arts center of our time. And we find that the more rabid the fan of the content is, the more they can't wait to be in a room together to celebrate and experience it together. So I would say that the digital customer of today, as opposed to where we started, where we started, digital was all about the technology and talking about how this was going to happen and everything. I think today's customer is kind of over and to a certain extent fatigued by the technology, and so they don't really care what it is, just make it work and make it work for me in my way and take me out of the middle of the decision train, if you will, and allow me to choose whether if I want to experience it online, if I want to watch it, on a television medium, if I want to watch it on my mobile phone, or if I want to come experience it together. And don't get me all caught up in your technology or your rules or this, that, or the other. And I think that to the extent that we answer that call from those customers, we're going to be enormously successful and have a great time doing it.
Yeah.
That's actually a perfect lead into my next question, which is really, is there such a thing as a non-digital customer today?
I'm sure, but I'm sure there's somewhere that somebody's only doing things analog. But our finding is that people don't. I think just to echo exactly what you said, people don't care how they get the content. They want to find content and they want to find community, and they're very loyal once they're there. But I think everything's digital now.
I think in terms of the technology, you're absolutely right. But I'll share with you, we do an event. We're 5 years into it now, called the Grateful Dead Meetup. And it will take place this year on May 5th. It'll be the actual 50th anniversary, so at midnight, everybody's going to throw stuff in the air. So we've done that on a non-regular basis since, I want to say 2004, around then. We started with the Grateful Dead movie, which was released first, I think, in 1997. And we were concerned about, well, do we need to, up-res it? Do we need to take it to Blu-ray? Do we need to actually create a digital master? And no, we went with exactly the 4x3 master. So it was shot in, I think, 16 millimeters. So it was 4x3. And the Dead fans told us, do not alter this. We want to see it exactly the way we saw it before. Now, at the same time, we do Gone with the Wind and things like that, where it is, digitally remastered and the like, so that audiences that never saw it on the big screen are now coming out in the hundreds of thousands to see it. But again, it's about understanding who your customer is and what technology does, what it adds to the experience or what it takes away from the experience. So
I would say, digital is a very broad word. We're at Digital Hollywood. I think when this started many years ago, digital meant different things. So, look, everything's digital. I would kind of throw it back. What is it? We could call it lots of different things. What is a customer? If you go to a movie theater, which is an analog experience, but maybe the film is digital. Look, I think for us, it's just, to me, that you have the direct consumer touch, and there's the ability to, this is just a great device, so, I don't know, it's a very broad, not to throw your question back at you, but, digital, it could be a lot of things, but I think, but none of us live in a world unless, where there's no digital, to some degree, and some touch point.
Yeah, I would agree with that point. I think that where I was going with that is more that, the word digital is no longer really a modifier necessary.
Sure. Yeah.
It's really, I think you actually just said it, you're really just talking about your audience. It's
Sure.
not a digital consumer anymore.
Right.
It's the audience.
Look,
And the audience lives in many places.
Right, we can talk about distribution, we can talk about transactional, we can talk about production, we can talk about multiple ways. The great thing is, as a producer, it's the greatest time right now, the syndication in television at least, the syndication finance rules went away. None of us could be an Aaron Spelling or, the opportunity now, the kid down the street can turn on Periscope and have the prices right, which is pretty amazing.
And I've been fascinated, and I do apologize for the misstatement, because I remember the last time we were on this panel, you were talking about how the whole online and multi-platform experience has really, energized your audience and provided a new level of engagement that was, in some respects, unexpected and surprisingly positive.
Yeah, for us, the last thing you think of is that The Price is Right is going to be, digital and current, and that's kind of been the joy of it. It was the last place you thought that something cool would happen, which is kind of a fun place to be in for us. And so we've pushed the boundaries every year, making extra content, live tweeting, creating events for our fans, creating, like you said, unprecedented access behind the scenes. And it has been fun because we have a ravenous fan base. There are people that lined up last night at 9 p.m. and spent the night on Fairfax to come to the taping that's going to happen in 2 hours. People fly across the country and they have pricecations that they come to and bedazzle their shirts and do their thing. And to be able to give them even more access has been really great because they see how the show's made now. And we're really lucky in that there aren't very many shows other than Let's Make a Deal Like It, where you're physically moving cars in and out and where you're physically moving giant set pieces in and out, and we shoot the show basically to real time, so the commercial breaks and all that, because it's a live concert event, and if we take 4 hours like a normal TV show, they will all be dead, including Drew Carey. So we move things in and out, and so when you give them that piece behind the scenes. It's really, they really engage. I think the hardest thing is you don't want to give everything away because there needs to be a little TV magic to it or a little movie magic to it too. So we've had a lot of internal debates on like how much do you give them, and when should we do that? And there's that next year we do it. So it's a balance, but it's been really fun.
It's an interesting point, just the observation, just between two totally different businesses, you know, and we see it in our world too. I mean, you know, the Bruce Jenner interview was an anomaly. He pulled 17 million viewers. I mean, I don't know the last time we saw that. I think it was like 15, 20 years. But like the super fan, like give me, you know, give me that. I'll take a small group of super fans over a broader, indifferent. You know, we do a live tour for Bob's Burgers. We should try a broadcast with yours. But like, you know, these kids show up, and it's you know, activating them at multiple touch points.
Well, this actually goes to the heart of the whole thing because it's not really about the digital consumer; it's about the community consumer.
Yeah.
And digital is the crazy amplifier and enabler of community and tribe, and that's where things get really sexy. Because it gets sexy whether you have a giant piece of IP platform that millions and tens of millions of people love, or whether you've got something more niche. That's what.
Yeah, there's more opportunity. It's not just a mass media event anymore. That you can have a tribal event with your consumers and maybe make more money than you would in a mass market situation as content creators.
Absolutely.
And we get very excited about a lot of the new platforms that are coming out that will serve the super fan and will actually monetize the super fan because value is in the eye of the beholder. I may really be a huge fan of Bob's Burgers and want to pay $50 for that access, or I could just wait and get it for free. And we think that that's, you know, really sort of the next, you know, frontier for us as creators is to find those audiences and serve those audiences in a variety of different ways so that the regular fan can have an engaging experience and the super fan can have a better experience.
One thing, you know, you use it on our, when we first spoke. I think what's great about what you have on CBS, when you guys had an ABC, we have Fox, there's so much traffic that you can't discount the megaphone. That was a term which I loved.
Yeah.
The megaphone, I mean, you still need broadcast. It's nothing like being on CBS in the afternoon or Fox on Sunday night. I mean, that gets the people to show up and, you know, getting seats and because you're fighting for that. That's really the challenge. In the crowd.
And I think that it's about once you have the megaphone, how do you avail yourself of the opportunities to monetize and engage that audience? And I think some networks are better at it than others and some creators are better at it than others, but it will become a point of sort of regular engagement. You've seen it in movies, at least, you know, the behind the scenes and the value added on DVDs. We're going to see that across all media for generations. And, you know, Mark obviously was the executive producer of Lord of the Rings and has seen that fan base, which is a mass fan base, but has been served over and over and over again. And those fans keep coming back because it transported them to a world they wanted to be in.
And also, it's important not to get airy-fairy about it, but it's important to be careful about the word customer as well, because this is really, I always like community first. Obviously, if people want to buy tickets, buy downloads, they're going to, but that there's a lot, we've found for sure, a lot of just engaging on the fan basis. It's part of the whole dialogue, because if it's too customer feeling, then it becomes cynical and calculated, and then it breaks the spell.
No, I think you're right. It's the difference between transactional and being inclusive and getting to go somewhere special. The Met, you might think, well, wow, that's a bunch of senior citizens and this, that, and the other, but literally for 10 years, they're the largest event content program in the world, and they start with a backstage tour.
Right.
You meet the artists, the directors, you get to see the production, and frankly, I've toured it, and I've done some of the biggest rock bands in the world, and they got nothing on the mat. That
Well, it's
stage
very
house
exciting.
is
I've always thought that
extraordinary.
that program was so exciting because you're giving people an opportunity to have that level of that cultural experience within their backyard, where
Right.
they don't have to travel to New York for that
And they
experience.
can't because it's sold out.
Right.
So the other thing I was going to share with you was last year there was an outstanding film called The Fault in Our Stars. And we worked with Fox on The Fault in Our Stars, and we offered a Thursday night preview, if you will, for the Friday opening. And so we sold out 700 theaters in a matter of a day or two. It's the largest advance gross in the history of Hollywood that I'm aware of, because people don't buy So we did $2.3 million. It was $25 a ticket. It had John Green, who's a rock star, as the author. It had the male and female lead from Divergent. And we had several of the musicians from the soundtrack perform live. So at the end of the day, very successful, right? Super served those fans. But what you might not have expected was it was free online. Yahoo showed everything but the movie. And the reality is that more people went to Yahoo because they couldn't get into the theaters. And then social media exploded Thursday, Friday, because everyone's going back and forth about, well, I saw it, I was there, there was a bracelet and a poster and blah, blah, blah. So they're all talking about it. And at the end of the day, this beautiful film, but would you have expected it to be number one?
Yeah, well, I said, by the way, I think you guys did amazing, but I actually say yes, because that goes back, I mean, I think the word is audience to me, just customer, because there you had a book, which if you have, talk to teenagers, it's the most important book they've read, so like, they knew about, I had no idea what this thing was, but I was going to think they activated a very active audience base. And I agree with you, I think customer's a dirty word, but to me, I think the two are, it's an audience and it's programming. And I mean, we have the opportunity to program in between your megaphone moments and your other things. And I think it's really about programming, and the audience and activating them to some degree.
Just for you guys, I was wondering, because we talk a lot about, hey, don't forget about the 6 million people that are watching the TV show. We'll get so caught up in making our web video that we think is fun, because it's like being back in college. You're like, this is so fun, and nobody really it's great. But for you guys, is there a point where you think, I mean, the megaphone is the most important part. How much can you really drive if you don't have that solid fan base with the book, or with the fans or with the stars? How much can it move the needle, or is it? We always feel like it's not driving it yet, like that the megaphone drives everything, and that the other stuff just kind of makes it stickier. And I'm wondering if you guys have felt like you've been able to move the needle from the digital side and help the megaphone.
Well, our megaphone is our trailers. So for every event that we put out, we run trailers for 4 to 6 weeks. In some cases where we get way out in front of it, we'll run trailers for a longer period of time. It has a typical retail value of around $500,000. But we find that what really sells the tickets is social media. I'm going, and this is what I'm interested. I'm in the club. I got to be in the room.
Is that driven by the studio? Do you typically see that? Where does that come? I mean, you've seen it across different things. I mean, have you seen something organically start from flat, or where do you typically see that coming from?
Well, I mean, we can see it because we're running trailers, but then the spike will come when one of the key participants tweets, or posts on Facebook, or we run a Pinterest promotion or something that in essence people move beyond just seeing a trailer to, oh wow, I'm invited, I'm interested, I need to be part of this.
Well, it's interesting because we have not seen it go from digital to mainstream, although you can find IP digitally that's interesting to turn into sort of a mass media event. But the Quest was particularly interesting for us because anecdotally we could start seeing that way after the finale that there was action, and it was a reality show, and our fans were rewatching the show. They've rewatched it 3 times. They get together, they live tweet,
and they know who won.
And they know who won, so it's not exactly. And we were surprised by that. So we actually hired somebody to look at the social analytics. Our social media community has grown 23% since the finale, which means that people are finding it well off of ABC and all through the social media, and hey, you've got to check this out. It's a very particular, like bullseye for a fantasy fan, or for people that want to sort of aspire to be heroic in their lives. And it is family entertainment. So it doesn't really answer your question exactly, but there are these, it definitely firms up for us that if you have compelling and good content, people will find it. And I think that that's happening across the board.
Well, and I think also the other place we found it is like with Doctor Who.
Yeah.
We've done several Doctor Who events. They've sold over 500,000 tickets over the franchise. And last year, in August, we had the season 8 opener, and it was on a Saturday night. So it went first on BBC America. We had 12 cinemas at 12 midnight that offered the ability to come out and see it in the theaters, and then we went wide on Monday. And we did it, for programming reasons, because it's hard to compete with Hollywood features on Friday, Saturdays, and Sunday. So we sold over 100,000 tickets on the Monday. And we did a Nielsen survey, and we said, okay, so did you know about it? And the customer said, knew about it. I couldn't wait for it. Did you see it on TV? Absolutely. So, but they're all coming out, they're dressed up as Whovians,
Yeah,
the tribe has a name.
Well, it speaks to the tribal nature of what we've seen. I mean, obviously the lesson's long and came from years of being at New Line, but when people really attach themselves to content in a personal way, they find each other and they want to see each other. I mean, Mark and I went to the last Ring party, which was
the party that the OneRing.net has been throwing every year since the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films have been getting Oscar nominations. So this was really, barring another film from Peter Jackson, which I suppose anything is possible, people thought this might be the last one. So we went
and
there.
People traveled from all over the world to be there.
Black tie, cosplay. It was fantastic, and there was like 1,000 people there, and there was live stream interviews, people tweeting. It was autographs. It was fantastic, and it was totally analog and digital at the same time.
Yeah, nobody's represented here, but there are these companies which everybody knows about that are hosting live video game contests.
Right.
And being aired on Twitch, and to the tune of 24 million people watching.
Yeah,
and that's a whole. Nobody's represented on this panel, but you start talking about that world, and those are people showing up live. They're watching live, and then it's being streamed out, and just like ESPN.
Yeah, we've done Riot Games. We were in the last one did like 30 million online, and League of Legends. And so we had it in 12 theaters in the Seattle area. They were all sold out. It was midnight to 6 a.m. And people had the time of their lives. We've done binge views with your films.
Right.
And, people will come out and they'll watch, all the Hobbit features back to back and love it.
Yeah, it's great.
How much of your business is marketing versus revenue driven? Like stunts to help drive the studios come and say, look, let's build versus let's just another path to
all the above. I mean, literally at the end of the day, our biggest question is, is this an event? Is there an identifiable audience? And in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily something. It might take a while to develop, but so if you're from Los Angeles, you might have noticed that the Kings played the Sharks. They've sold out 70,000 seats in San Jose Levi Stadium. And so we brought it to the greater Los Angeles area, put it in 3 multiplexes, and did 90% on a Saturday night for a game that literally was on NBC Sports. But the Kings thought it was cool, the Sharks thought it was cool, NBC thought it was cool. And if you look at the clip of everybody coming, they're dressed like they're at the game. They're wearing their jerseys, and it was a huge event experience coming as families.
And I think what's interesting about the panel is that everything starts with the idea that people want to commune around content.
Right.
And no matter where or how. I mean, our fans actually had a Merry Quest missed gift exchange. So they were actually sending each other Christmas gifts that they built and made, and it was extraordinary, and I think that, it may start, on television and, convert over to digital on Twitter and Facebook, but ultimately they crave the human connection of their mutual interest, and I think that any content whether it starts off small and builds from a grassroots level, or starts out mass and becomes more personal.
And
I think that that's sort of, in both directions, the way content's moving.
And this is something we learned at New Line in a big way growing up. Like, you can have a base hit success, and because of things that happen in home entertainment now and digital, that can grow an audience that will then motivate, whether sequel is the right word, it might not be the right word.
As a particular example, Friday, which was the Chris Tucker Ice Cube movie.
You just had it in the...
Yeah.
Yes.
The first one was a moderate success, and our head of home video, Steve Einhorn, came to us and said, you should look at these numbers. And it had become, it tracked from like a cult level on home video. It had been solidly selling for month after month after month. We decided to greenlight a sequel, and it did $100 million. And now it's
Yeah, we
being
just brought it
aired.
back. It was the 20th anniversary. Conan had Ice Cube, appear on his show to push it. And you know who our biggest marketing partner was? Universal Music
I was gonna say
for the
For the
soundtrack.
soundtrack.
Well, there is that.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about the shared experience, because I find it fascinating to go watch a sporting event at a movie theater, as much as I love the movie theater experience. But, we played with virtual reality. I think it's one of the coolest toys. 3D didn't work. I think that 3D didn't work because you lose the social experience. You're creating a single experience, and it's kind of weird to watch the Super Bowl, 6 people, and you're all wearing a headset. But VR is fascinating because you can truly trick the mind's eye.
Right.
We did projects, Samsung initially launched, and it's just a fascinating, tool, but it's still singular. And I think that's ultimately a challenge of you can't create the communal experience.
Although you're offering experience.
Right.
Right, and I guess all of this is offering experience. The Price is Right always blows me away because you do drive down Fairfax and they're all dressed up and they're having a ball.
Yeah, it's its own, interesting, Drew Carey's a big tech guy, and he goes, it's the end of television. VR is the end of television. You will never want to do anything else. And I said, well, I hear you. I think that sounds really fun. And he had done it and lost his mind, thought it was amazing. But what I pointed out was, that's fun, but it's a singular experience, or you can do it with a couple of buddies, but it's not a shared experience. And for him, it was, this is the greatest technology, and that's what made it cool. I said, I don't think it signals the end of The Price is Right. I think it signals we should come up with a VR Price is Right game.
Although I think it'd be really cool if I lived in middle America, feel what it's like to be in the crowd of the Price is
Right.
Right, the audio. I mean, that'd be awesome. Feel that whole excitement and watch it.
It is so loud, and everyone walks out with their hands sore from clapping so much. That's basically, that's the note.
Picking up on the VR thread and the community thread, do you think perhaps a VR experience may involve that kind of combination where people get together, experience something that is created for VR, but are doing it in a group setting?
I'd say you look at Sims, or I forget was that
SimCity.
SimCity, that one that was like Something Life. What was that?
Second Life.
Second Life.
At some
Life,
point,
yeah.
have those experiences. It's just to take a creative genius, like a Peter Jackson. Take somebody who's just a visionary. At the end of the day,
And from my understanding, the technology's not quite there. It
Yeah.
needs to be a very simple experience in order, and I'm sure there are people that can speak to it better than I can or anybody here, but I think that it's not there yet in terms of, you have to be kind of simplistic in the experience you're giving them because it's too much for the brain.
that's what I forget. We're talking about cool technology. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything without great creators. We're, as a producer, I couldn't be luckier to work with the creators we work with and producers. Without that, it's just ones and zeros. For us, it's you put this tool in a genius's hands, and you wouldn't believe what they came up with. Or they say, if I could do this, and that's the cool thing about digital. It's just creating, having these amazing people take us places, we want to go.
And I think it's also one of the reasons that people will not sit and just watch their laptop on TV. I know that's what the younger generation's doing, but if you remember, I finally got a TV in my room when I was 16. I sat in my room and watched it by myself. I could do that on a laptop now, but I think that's you tend to be more alone and angry. But I think once you hit 25, 26, 27, you want to sit with your roommates and you watch the show. You have a shared experience. So I think that freak out of everybody's just going to stream things, which they will stream things. The delivery system's the same. But that idea that I could watch something I don't want to watch Game of Thrones on a laptop while my wife's sitting watching Game of Thrones on another laptop. That's not fun to me.
Yeah.
So I think that people will continue. Everyone's freaked, but I believe that once that generation gets older, they'll do what we all did, which is want to be around other people.
I am shocked at my age that I now watch television, my favorite shows, with my Twitter open, and I'm totally engaging with the hashtag community. I mean, the Quest sort of got us into it because we were live tweeting the Quest at the time, but I stunned myself that I'm actually doing that, and that it definitely enhances my experience.
And
like,
I do
for
have to
sure.
say the rewatches of the Quest blew our mind.
Yeah.
I mean, we were outpacing certain TGIT shows with our hashtag.
And we hashtagged the TGIT just to be cheeky.
On the second and third screening of,
Yeah.
of a television show. And to grow 24, 20, 23,
Yeah.
24% since the finale and have an engagement rate that's tracking with broadcast shows, that's very exciting as content creators to know that you have a second, third, fourth life with content that you've worked really hard with. The key, I think, also is, and I'm intrigued, this is a question for Mike, is to get sort of the network establishment to start thinking in a more agile way so that we can actually continue that. And I think that that's
we've been really
interesting.
lucky with because we're on CBS, and they want to be a part of that, and they're looking at taking risks, and they're looking at, we put an enormous amount into creating extra content separate from the show. Sometimes it ties to the show. We did a it was it was the pinnacle of my career. We did a male model search, and we did a full reality show like America's Next Top Model, and that aired only on Prices. That aired only on Price is Right. And from that, and it was a voted thing, and it was this whole thing, and then we ended up with James O'Halloran, the gorgeous Australian model that's on our show. So that's that's CBS, that's Fremantle, putting an enormous amount of resource into something that you don't know whether it's going to work. That no money came back from it. We weren't selling ads on it. It was a pure marketing play to create more content. And so you need to be with people that want to push.
And it's
we've been
smart
lucky
because
with
if
that.
you have an established brand like The Price is Right, why would you want to start another show? It's much easier and better to continue and
Right.
put resources into a show that's got 24 years behind it. 24?
43.
43. Sorry, look at me.
I was
Well,
very young when it started.
The other thing I was going to suggest, we kind of had the same experience in the theaters, and that is, you've all been to movies, you've all seen the little trailer that says, shut off your cell phones. Okay, for Fathom Events, that doesn't work. We want your cell phone on, in particular for live Q&A and things like that, so you can use your Twitter account, you can use your social media to engage with the people that are part of the live Q&A.
As long
And
as they're
then,
not video streaming it, not paying for it.
I'm sorry?
As long as they're not periscoping.
No,
not paying for it.
no, that's, I remember Willie Nelson used to say that they're not stealing in any greater proportion than they're buying. So, but that took a real change of culture. That okay, if it's a concert event, get up and dance. If it's Q&A and audience engagement, then find a way to get your creative people to bring that into the show, as opposed to saying, no, we don't do that here.
We should talk about piracy too. I mean, it's a loaded word, but within the realm of within the digital realm, I'm friendly with Neil Gaiman, who has done a whole 180 on what is deemed piracy, because piracy, is it marketing or is it theft? And in the digital realm, particularly for content creators, particularly for studios and networks, it's a really charged issue. I'd be curious people's perspectives.
Marcia, you have a challenge of you want to, fan art is the greatest form of flattery.
Yeah.
With your character and you want to create that. And I think, because again, it also ties back to monetization, right? Because I think you don't have to change your question, and correct your question, your thought, but the big challenge of all this is, with all these multiple bites of the apple, how do you get paid for it, right? Or how do you convince a brand they should pay more for it? Or what's the metrics for them? That'd be great. Look, as license fees go down and your audience go down, it's challenging. It'd be great to figure that out. But no, you're right. I think, we all sign these ridiculous, protect IP, multiple security things, and so all of a sudden, but you want to release art. There's a bit of a hear no evil, see no evil at the studios, but you're right. It's a fine line.
Yeah, I think that we will, I mean, we've been obviously thinking about it a lot because there's nothing sort of more heartbreaking than when you sell all rights into the mass marketer and then they don't avail themselves of the opportunity that's in front of you.
Right.
So what we've been talking about a lot is there a way for content creators to carve out or at least share particular exploitation rights? It's currently, you know, the studios and networks aren't super game for that, but we think that if you're smart about capitalizing your content and seeding rights before you even go in to sell that piece, that you know, you're going to have more of a fighting chance.
Yeah.
But it is hard because if otherwise you're sort of working double time and not being compensated.
That's a good point. We actually, I won't mention which show, which creator, which network, but we actually took a different approach. You know, you can, 10 years ago, they used to make us prosecute these people.
Right.
We've actually gone and said, look, you know, like sometimes our critics, that's cooler fan art than I would have created. So we go ahead and say, look, I'll pay you for it, right? We make them licensees. Yeah, we've actually done that a couple times for T-shirts and for other things. You know what? They make it better than we do. You know, sometimes the L&M departments don't. You know, so why not activate them?
Yeah.
You know, and that's been actually a really interesting model that some of our partners bought into, which has really worked well.
Did you find that most of the pirates, if you contacted them on that basis, like were interested in being
We have
licensed?
two choices, right?
That's a
Make
good
money
point.
or get sued. So it's
You're
really
gonna make them an offer they can't
But
refuse.
usually, if they put that much effort into it, they're fans.
Yeah.
So to have you call them,
Yeah.
which and I've done the same thing. We're like, we really think that's cool. And they're like, wait, seriously? This is
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is guy from the Lord of the. I mean, really?
Yeah.
They're usually amenable to. They just want to be a part of it.
And
They
they're,
just
they're an active voice.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're-
super,
Yeah.
we call it
That's like
those
my grandma.
influencers.
Yep.
Or,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, OneRing.net started out as a sort of a spy site is the wrong word, but passionate fans who wanted the most information they could get, even if they had to like hide up on a hillside looking down at a film set to do it. And now it's become this robust, huge community that's both about community, it's about sales, it's about all kinds of stuff.
And they've expanded into sort of like-minded content and support anything that sort of supports that fantasy fan.
Mm.
it's also aggregating creative. I mean, like, instead of getting hires to 5 licensees that the licensee agent actually shows you then almost look in the world of, wow, here's a creator who may never have done such a thing, but created something that's really amazing. And I think that's where digital actually opens up, extensions and things.
And they become your provider, not your
Yeah.
customer, which
Yeah,
goes back to community.
Are you finding that some of the fans, especially on something like a Lord of the Rings or anything else, they actually become almost as protective of the property because of that passion? Is that?
I think
evident?
within the environment, I can only speak to our own events, but we definitely bring out the passionate folks, and I've not seen it, but people do use their phones and social media to interact with each other. But I think if you set up, like even an iPhone pointed at the screen, there's no way the fans would allow that to happen. They know exactly what you're doing. And they know that content can't continue, if in essence everyone isn't somewhat behaving by the rules. So at least that's what I've seen in the level of commitment to the costume that they're coming in, the passion with which they buy them, and the way they feel about the brands, just watching. Because we monitor, when an event's on our network, we're watching weather and we're watching all this other stuff that's going on, but we're also watching social media, because sometimes social media tells us when there's a transmission problem in one theater before the theater manager is able to get his arms around it, so our network people can get into them, and they tell us what's going on.
I think that's great.
I actually heard a similar thing in a field that also is not really represented here fully, which is music. There's certainly a resurgence in festivals and the staging and production and everything else, while everybody's running around listening in acoustic experiences isolated with earbuds and so forth. There's you go out to places like Coachella or South by or even smaller regional events, and they're there in droves, and the staging of it is getting even bigger. And on the social thing, I remember hearing a producer saying that they monitor social, not only just to see how things are going, but often to find out when there's not enough toilet paper in the porta-johns and all of that kind of stuff. So it's it sees part of what we're gravitating to with the community is sort of the evolution of what a couple of years ago became known a little bit as the Netflix effect, where because it is available in other ways, other forms, those audiences are able to discover it. And it seems to be creating an entirely, vast new market. And one other point I'll just throw out as a follow-up on the piracy question is what we saw with Game of Thrones and HBO. And they calculated, it seemed, from reports I read, that there was a tolerable amount of piracy that in some respects led to the incredible popularity of the show. It also, I think, probably led to the launch of HBO Now. Any comments on either of those?
I'll go with your first statement. I think for us, for all of our shows, I think Netflix, Hulu, creating the opportunity to watch your shows not as destination watching. That's at least I can speak for scripted comedy for us at least. We've had people discover our shows other places. And that has doesn't necessarily reflect in your overnights or your DVR numbers. It reflects in growth. And for us, we can't tell the other fans, I found your show on Netflix, or I found your show on Hulu, and then they come back. And so we need that early actually in the studio. First season you get there, the different deals, your second window deals, but it becomes that you talk about the megaphone. It's the extended megaphone of watching it, and it's very important for us. I mean, those deals are shifting now as the business model evolves. As for HBO Go, I think OTT is fascinating. I forget. I'm not sure I read this somewhere. I can't take credit for it, but at some point, all the unbundling, people want bundling, right? So at some point, you're going to have 10 subscriptions. You're going to want to have a paid. Maybe they'll say, look, I want HBO, Netflix, and something else. But I think these services are kind of interesting. ESPN, Disney suing Verizon now for unbundling. So that whole OTT world is fascinating on that whole space. But clearly, at least from our perspective, to win, to find your way through the clutter, you want these digital platforms to give the discovery opportunity.
Well, and I think you see it in the importance for curation in sort of the tornado of digital content is going to become something that's important, and I think there'll be a breakup, and then people will start collecting again, and you'll have curation. But we look at it, you do need support, otherwise you're screaming in a hurricane. If you have a piece of content and you just throw it into the digital universe, it's problematic. And it's interesting in the film side of things, for video on demand, I think a lot of the traditional thinking is like, we'll really lower our marketing spend and we'll just throw it up there. And, I'm hoping things like The Interview, which, obviously had a lot of PR support, will show that if you put some marketing, a healthier marketing budget behind a video on demand release, that's where the win is. What's a little baffling is this idea, like, let's just not support it except through a very minimal amount and then throw it into the hurricane. And I think that, that's still being worked out on the film side of things, but somewhere between the mega blockbuster Avengers and like throwing something into the digital space is probably the answer for a lot of those films.
I have a question because I find clips fascinating because I've been a fan of your shows in and out and but when I see a really funny clip, I re-engage. So for me it's like at those moments sometimes. It's a little bit different, but I'm just kind of curious how you guys deal with you have those nuggets.
Yeah, really, and sometimes you know when they happen, and sometimes you don't. We had an interesting thing happen we had Bob Barker come back on April Fool's Day, and we didn't say anything to anyone. And they said, now here's your host, Drew Carey, and Barker walked out. And the place literally came apart. And great moment, we packaged clips and, lots of press and everything. So it got a healthy amount of attention. 3 days later, there was a show where one of our models decided that the game was over, and yet it wasn't, and gave away a car. Literally, and we were like, what? And so the Barker clip, just for us, I think hit 2 million or something like that. The model clip of giving away car hit 17 million. National treasure, guy who started the show, model can win a car. But it has affected the way we produce the show, because when that happened, I flew out of my seat. I was like, do not stop. Because when something goes wrong, everyone's instinct is to just go pump the brakes. And I was like, do not. I went sprinting out. If you look carefully at the clip, you can see I come in and I catch Drew and I'm like, freaking out, go. And he goes, like, you don't need to acknowledge it. But anyway, and so we kept going. We knew we had something there. Right. We would have had no idea that it would go that humongous. And we had a similar one where someone bid $7,000 for a hammock. We didn't even notice it, to be honest. We went, people bid ridiculous things on that show all the time. People lose their minds, whatever. It went everywhere. The guy was on Ellen because he was horrible at bidding. And so, I mean, it has affected, and it's amazing. Sometimes we know exactly what's going to happen, and sometimes we're clueless. But we for sure have fallen in line, and I think Late Night was the first ones to the party, which is they're doing an hour show to get a 3-minute clip. I mean, this is not the Johnny Carson era where it's about a great hour. They're about getting 3 minutes to, who's going to be, is it Kimmel? Is it the other Jimmy? Whatever. And we aren't there yet, but we for sure curate an enormous amount of clips. And on Let's Make a Deal, we have Wayne Brady, who is, maybe the most talented person in television, running around, improvising things, and he did a song. And again, we thought it would be good. We put the clip out, and it's about one of the contestants is the boyfriend had left her or cheated on her, something, and so he improvised a song in the moment because she was winning, and he does this amazing song live, and it went everywhere. Now, he's done, to me, funnier things, more amazing things that we've put out that hasn't caught, and if I can ever figure out how that works, I'll be really, really rich. But it has definitely affected how we do it.
Understanding that customer and understanding the audience, really getting a sense of it, must have informed you in that sort of blink of the eye instant. Because what was that experience like? You had to make a very quick decision on the fly. Because again, usually if there's a game thing, which doesn't happen very often, it's, oh God, stop, and let's figure out what happened. Did we just give away, what? There was just something that there was no question in my mind. I literally just jumped up and started screaming in the headset, keep going on every, there's like 4 channels, and I'm just like, keep going, as I'm running out to tell Drew to keep going. But that was just, we would have left that in the digital age or in 75, right. Like that. But I knew that was going to be an amazing moment, and it was great. We're going to get ready to open up for questions in just a sec. So if you're harboring any, get them ready, because we will ask. I guess just as kind of maybe a roundup question before we open to everyone in the room. Have you noticed anything in the marketplace that perhaps is not related specifically to your own properties, but something that you've recognized with the audience or in the market that has particularly caught your eye as harnessing the opportunity today?
Well, I think that, for me, this live gaming thing kind of blows my mind, and sort of the irrelevance. I know television and features are our game, but when you have 24 million people watching 2 guys play a video game, that's pretty mind-blowing to me. And that is, those are the fans that we're inheriting, and those are the eyeballs that we would love to avail ourselves of. So it's just, for me, something to keep an eye on, to know more about, because I think that's just such a seat change.
For us, for our company, we're really fascinated with Periscope and other live streaming, because we feel like it's like radio in the 30s. Like, now everybody's doing it, but it needs to be programmed. It needs to be sponsored and monetized. Our creators are having so much fun with it right now, and I just, we feel like at some point you're going to find the right model with the right sponsor and the right live event, then you can tape it, put it out, as a podcast later. I just think that's really cool. That's something that somebody's going to win that first and do really well.
I'd just say that I actually heard it on the radio on the way in that 90% of people who are on Twitter identify Twitter as their central source as to whether they're going to go see a movie or not. So that in some ways critics and stuff like that who had an enormous, Siskel and Ebert, there's no Siskel and Ebert anymore, that drives us, that can move the needle. And kind of goes back to your point, which is that a movie that catches on, people are finding out about their movies. And I think it is more movies than TV, but my takeaway this morning was, oh God, how do I start getting people to go, you should really watch The Price is Right? I mean, should we be giving advanced fan screeners to the decision makers? Should we have had the Barker clip out, or the Barker episode, to 1,000 of our biggest fans that then create a movement to drive ratings? Because in daytime, we're on all the time, so it's not precious. It's not like prime time. It's like, trust me, we'll be back doing it again tomorrow. And so there isn't that like, oh, I got to get to that Monday show. And everyone has seen, especially in daytime, that putting a guest star, nothing matters. Nothing moves the needle. It's about repetition and forming habits. But just hearing that could steer, that 90% of them based it entirely on what they had read about the movie on Twitter, made me think, wow, that's something that hopefully we could harness for our shows, whether it's Quest or whatever, all of them.
I would echo, what you were saying there, and I would say that it's really about being live or having the sense that it's live, meaning that time is really important, that this is not something for VOD, and that your level of participation is within your control. You can choose the screen. You can choose the way that you want to interact. I mean, we definitely try to incorporate live or as live, whether you're going East Coast, Central, or Mountain and Pacific. And secondly, the ability to narrowcast, to, in essence, define the experience based upon the platform. I don't know that you see a lot of it yet, but we definitely think it's coming, because we're carrying content that is specifically designed for the cinema audience, which means that you can speak directly to that audience. I mean, when we talk to, we were talking to Open Road and Jon Stewart particularly about Rosewater. And, so Jon Stewart and his manager, well, why is this important? And I said, well, because what other forum can you speak to your fans? They all know you from, The Daily Show and this, that, and the other. Where can you tell them your story about Rosewater? Everybody else is going to chop it up into these moments. They're going to tell what you said in their way. And this gives you that, one-on-one interaction. So I think that live, whether it's sports or, documentaries with Q&As or binging events, with Peter Jackson or whatever, I mean, they'll line up for that. So
It used to be the audience is listening, now they're participating. Let's open it up to questions from the floor. Let's see, all the way in the back, and then we'll work our way up.
We're familiar with it. Trying to figure out the best way for, in our shows, is there an added, we talk about the second screen experience. I think, is there a second screen experience to have? We haven't done it yet. I can see it in sports possibly. I don't know. It's a really interesting place. We look at some second screen stuff, but we haven't seen much about it. We're familiar with it. I think it's really fascinating. I think that would take on faster than VR at some point, when they're the right device.
I think the toughest thing with it's not a closed subject whether that second screen is a good thing. I mean, if you're someone who's making content, there's a level that the second screen is good, and there's a level that the second screen is distracting you from the actual thing that we would all like you to watch. So there's, I think it'll be augmented reality. There'll be something that can take it to a whole nother level that seems seamless, and right now I think it feels still like clumsy thing, and we've done some second screen stuff and that have been really neat, but again, it's distracting you from we can only watch, you know, the Twitter feed, the things coming across, the bugs, the promos, the this, the that. Now you're going to watch this, and I got that, and I got headphones on. I'm in a virtual reality world spinning a wheel. I think it's a lot. So I think someone will have to come up with that seamless way to do it.
Steve.
John, you say that you encourage people to have their phone in the theater to the ones who really participate. And Mike, on the other hand, you have Bob Barker show up and you make use of that video clip. But the question I ask for the two of you, how do you balance where the line gets drawn? You have found you have people with a phone and they could be sitting and recording the whole concert and then sharing it. And you know, your Bob Barker clip could have been shared in social media before you had the opportunity to share it. So where is the line for which you get drawn? What's acceptable and what's not?
I would say on our side, first, we're kind of giving you the ground rules as to how you're going to use it. You're going to use it to engage in the conversation and the content and the event, if you will. And also, I think that it's not like you're sitting in a theater by yourself at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, running your iPhone, hoping that the usher doesn't walk in. I mean, you're in the middle of a live action event and you're surrounded by people. If you're there just to tape it or to record it, then you're not part of that community. And I think that the chances are more likely than not that you're going to be outed by the people sitting around you, knowing that what you're doing is not acceptable.
I also think that it's about how much of a 360-degree experience you're giving your fan. If you're only dependent upon your movie event or your television show to provide capital back to the creators, then piracy is going to hurt, you know, cut a very deep wound. If you have different product lines that are all coming off of that same brand, that having more people aware of it will drive them to buy other parts of that experience, that it's going to hurt less. But, you know, it's balance.
Yeah, and for us, it's a massive debate for every clip, for everything is a huge decision. In the Barker thing, we went around and around, and, you know, I said, if no one knows he's on, well, what good is it? Because the same people that were watching the day before are going to be watching it when he's on, and so we don't get any bang for our buck. But at the same time, you want to have a special experience for your fans, because I wanted that same feeling for everyone sitting at home going, oh my God, what just happened? So there certainly we have not come up with a set of parameters yet. It is just massive debate, and usually it's whoever's loudest in the room right at the end is how the decision gets made. So on the Barker one, we said that he's coming, but we didn't say in what context, and I can't remember, we talked about even leaving out what day, so that you wouldn't necessarily know, and then when it got closer, said he's coming this day, and then so that there was some precious moment to watching it as opposed to just giving away a secret. But it's definitely a formula, because if no one knows and it's your own secret, it doesn't matter.
Over here.
You mentioned about the audience experience is now very, very dramatic, very multi-level. Is there an element where the audience might take over and in a way to change content? Look at the history of Lost, look at the history of Breaking Bad, looking at all that. If you look at those histories, you're not talking about your guys manipulating the audience, you're talking about the audience manipulating you. Is there a point at which that's a danger, and how do you deal with that, or how do you think that's coming about?
We don't manipulate our audience. I think for us, we respond to what they do. I mean, fan fiction and the fan stuff, I think we
Well,
kind of...
they change the content. I mean, that's what happened in Lost when there was obsessive, when they forced the creators to change their particular position. You can get a position where the audience might be flipping in the
I don't know, because it depends. I mean, about the term forced, right? I mean, if I mean, certainly Peter Jackson is one of the most engaged with his fans among the major creators I know. He definitely cares what they think and he engages, but ultimately he still is entrusted to create this experience for people. If he's motivated to show Tom Bombadil or not show Tom Bombadil, like that's still a decision he's making.
Right.
But if he's influenced, I'm not sure.
Well, it's like right now, like this week, like McDreamy leaving
Right.
Grey's Anatomy, like after 20 years. I mean, like the fans went nuts. So like, I mean, like shouldn't break them. I mean, that's all business issues, not that. I don't know. It depends on the creator.
I think it's
yeah.
creator based
Yeah.
for sure, because if it's someone iconoclastic and with a real strong point of view, then I think it's only positive. Sometimes you don't have that, and then things can get. If there's a manufactured feel to the content, that's always a bad thing, whether it's driven by a network note or driven by a fan thing,
Right.
whatever it is. Once you get the manufactured feel, you're screwed.
Well, once a year, we now turn the show over to the fans, and Twitter decides
Really?
what they wear, what the game is. We'll give them just, you want to see this or that. How do you want Plinko's going to do this or that. So we
Is it live show?
no, but it's like it's a whole mess as to how we do it. But it gives them. It's like they get to tell us,
Yeah.
and then it's like free market. It's like free market research. They tell us everything they love. I hate when you do. You get these. I hate when you do this, but I love when you do that. Okay. And they made some surprising decisions along the way that informs us as we go. But we allowed them to just, here you go. I mean, down to what do you want the models to wear? You want this outfit or that outfit? It's really fun because everybody gets to have their vote.
So in fairness to what happened on Lost, I think that was very early in the game, so to speak, where there was, I think, a lot of interest in giving the fans a voice and really reflecting it. That it may not have worked completely is certainly valid. However, the experiment I think was probably worth the risk.
Whatever happened to the executive producer of that show? Did he ever do anything?
He disappeared.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Tim Craig, he's there. You, and you. 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, I just wanted to ask about the dynamics of marketing. So, Ms. Fleming was talking about, right now we're stuck in this thing where all the money goes to like a couple of big projects, and then the rest of the creators are trying to figure out how to do marketing. I'm wondering how much do the networks rely on creators to sort of just basically guerrilla this stuff, with the bill. You go to the executives say, I'm going to do a Twitter campaign. They say, great, we're going to fund that yourself. Figure it out. Because we don't have, I mean, I come from books, so
Right.
I don't know. But I'm just wondering, in Hollywood, I assume creators are footing the bill for a lot of that?
Yeah, we have a sad story to tell. No, we did, in fact, lean into our own marketing efforts on our show.
Yeah.
PR mostly, and obviously we're very active on social media. We're happy we did it because it absolutely sort of revolutionized the way we think about creating content and how we'll engage with our financier partners going forward. And yes, I think that it is, the onus is always going to, the onus is always going to be on creators to continue to push their own visions. Some creators get a bigger, like, piggy bank to play with. But as those stakes go up, they actually get less and less control, too.
Yeah, and I find, listen, you only get to walk up to the plate once per show. So whether you're given a proper bat or you're given like a lame little twig, you're going to be there. And for us, we had 4 years into the quest. If we would have liked more support, that didn't make any difference. This was the hand we'd been dealt, and we were not going to stand at the plate and just let the ball get thrown past us. So ultimately, and by the way, you can't calculate all the variables. The truth is, the game unfolds. You don't know how it's going to play around. And Jay and I worked at a studio. We were on the executive side, so we never make judgments about why people make the decisions they make, even when they go not the way we would like them. But nonetheless, the bat is there for swinging, so we always swing, even if it costs us some shekels out of our own pocket.
And I think creators more and more, because of this direct access to their
Yeah.
fans, have an ability to attract hearts and minds, and it goes a long way. I mean, our fans are very grateful for our level of engagement with them, and are very grateful that during their retweets, But we popped in every once in a while, and that was just purely fan base. But it goes a long way, and I think that any writer, director, producer, studio exec, anybody that is engaging with their fan base, it pays off in ways that we won't know for decades.
I would say I think every network and studio is open to innovative ideas. I think the challenge, we've all been, I've straddled it. They, as creators, you want the show, or you don't care, right? But they have to deal with things that we don't think about, right? I mean, you have complex deals and rights and approval rights. I mean, you have, rights bifurcated. Sometimes it's easier, like, because one mess up, will just, make such a headache that sometimes it's easier just to do this, where you're like, but that's not good for the show. So, I think there's a give and take, but, sometimes you're like, that's the challenge that these creators, you don't really think about or really care about, but you have to respect and help. And that's when you have smart people on both sides. You respect the issues and you kind of find that way. Everyone wants a hit, right? And that's nobody wants to say, no, I want this show to fail. Most of the time.
And one thing we'll say to any creator out there is start building your fan base now. And there are ways to do it from a grassroots level to find like-minded people that look at the stuff you're creating and like it. I mean, there's a Patreon, which is like a crowdsourcing, like a subscription-based crowdsourcing, so you can actually do serialized content. There are ways to build your fan base, friends, family, start, and just keep expanding your ring, because at some point, when you do go in, that's another arrow in your quiver.
Yeah, no,
My
for
fantasy
sure.
friend.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And I know it sounds lame to say it in a room like this, but when I left New Line, my brother Joel Ordesky, who's my digital guru, like he dragged me onto Twitter, and I said all the things you typically say, like, no, I got nothing to say, it's self-important. He said, start now, because when you want it, if you wait till you want it, it's calculating, cynical, and looks like false.
Yep.
If you just do it and get out of your own way, something organic and authentic will happen. And then when you do have a TV show on ABC that you want to, pump your chest about, then it has authenticity, which is crucial.
I'll just say also, just to really answer that question, as a creative person, there's no creative person that's like, you know what, I think we've gotten enough publicity. This campaign has been masterfully run. Yeah, and everyone cares. I think the creatives tend to get so passionate, that it's, and I definitely get like this, and we'll just start making our own things. We'll put together our own promo that maybe we just release on our YouTube channel. Whatever it is, you have to be in control, whether it's your book or whatever it is. You're the one that wants it the most. You're the one that will be in a bathtub full of tears if it doesn't go.
Right.
ABC or CBS or NBC or Fox will all have another 57 shows coming. So it's your responsibility to try to get the fans there.
We have 2 questions in 2 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the 2 people to both ask their questions, and then we'll have a little free-for-all to get them answered. So you first.
Yeah, hi. You mentioned virtual reality and augmented reality, and I believe that if you're watching a Super Bowl, and you could put the viewer on the field right next to the Belichick, that's exciting. If you ever go in a place where you've never been before as a viewer, it's really exciting. And what more of a statement and impression. I just think what John has done in live sports, nothing drives eyeballs like live sports. Between 4 networks, if 100 million people watch the NFL from Sunday afternoon to Monday night, nothing drives eyeballs like that. And if 115 million people watch the Super Bowl, and because another 10 or 15 or 20 can't be quantified by Nielsen,
Let's try to squeeze the question in. And
It's about also the technology you mentioned, like YouTube, social media, all these tend to do the same things to connect these big communities, worldwide communities, but at the same time disconnecting physically from other people. So what would be the future of theatrical movies, especially now the VR can give you the feeling of being in an IMAX theater and watching the movie on the big screen while being alone?
I mean, we think movies aren't going anywhere, but we think that the types of movies that will be in theaters are going to be event movies. All the studios, I mean, you can see the output now of all that all the studios are putting their money behind, and we call them theme park movies, where you go and you have a real experience, and you need the giant screen and the giant sound, and you're going to go spend a couple $100 for the family to go to this experience. And so we think that that movie-going experience is not going anywhere. That said, it will be supplanted by home theater dramatic content that you're going to watch directly in your home.
as with everything, is things come in, it expands the opportunity and
Well,
the
if it's
market.
really, and if it's good, you will go out and see it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth is, and it is more fun to see it with people. It's more fun to see a comedy with a group of people than it is to sit
Yeah.
at 1 o'clock in the morning at your house like I do and watch it. 'Cause then you just seem insane. So I think people still will humans will still want to interact at some point, and VR will just be another super cool thing that we can do to have an even different experience.
And everything we've talked about, everything is sort of pointing towards the fact that people are collecting in communities because they want that human interaction. They want to relate to content with other people. Even though digital, they may be doing it on Twitter, they may be doing it in theaters, they may be doing it at conventions, they may be dressing up and going to The Price is Right, but they're going because they want to have a communal experience around content.
And producers will create content to serve that audience, whether large, small, or somewhere in between. If you look back at the audience, in essence, will find scale, but particularly studios, top line, produce for scale. So if you're looking at implementing some of these new technologies, you've got to be realistic in terms of allocating your production budgets and resources and things like that against not where the technology will be, but where it is on the day of your release or maybe 6 months before. So
I want to thank all of our panelists, and please join me in thanking them.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
I used to do.
Excellent. Thank you.